Hey, my name's Alex Recorder, and this is my video discussion about what I've learned with the G1000 system so far. So I can say I've learned a lot of valuable information. I did almost all of my training in pedostatic steam gauge. I've got probably about 30 hours with G1000 systems, and they are incredibly helpful and beneficial and useful. One of the nice things about having a G1000 system is the primary flight display. So the primary flight display sets all your instruments up right in front of you. It's got the attitude indicator. It's massive, just sitting right in front of you. It's got your airspeed there, your VSI, your altitude, everything you could really need all in one central location. And it's very easy to read. It's got a target altitude, which is so helpful, especially when instrument flying and ATC gives you an altitude. Instead of just writing it down on a piece of paper that you have in your lap, you can literally just set it on the GPS and it'll let you know when you've got 1,000 feet to go. Same thing on approaches. If you want to set your minimums as your altitude, then it'll let you know when you're 1,000 feet from minimums. It's incredibly useful, and I find that very beneficial in my training, and it's really nice to have. Another great thing about the G1000 is it's got a diamond, which is shows you. Oh, you got a little pink line to follow with the arrow on it, which is where you're trying to go. But it's got a little diamond that shows you your ground track. And again, so helpful when flying on an instrument approach, so that you can just easily see where your ground track is and where it is in relation to your CDI. Like you can see, if you're getting left of course, then you just got to put the little pink diamond ground track triangle to the left of the arrow, and the line just comes back in. It just makes flying incredibly simple. Um, it's also got it also has this is also so nice when you're shooting an ILS. You've been flying GPS, you're going direct to the approach. It's magenta. That CDI is magenta, but it's in its and VLOC mode or VOR ILS mode or localizer mode is green. So it's really easy to remember to switch that button and give yourself VLOC mode for the ILS. And a lot of systems will just automatically load the ILS frequency in for you, though you should always double check, or the VOR VORTAC frequency when you're shooting a VOR approach. And that can really save you a lot of hassle. I also like that under the indicated airspeed, it'll give you true airspeed. So in pedostatic systems, there's really not an easy way to get your true airspeed. Some airspeed indicators have a little gauge underneath that you can set with the outside air temperature to get your true airspeed, but nobody does that, and it's really nice to have just something that tells you your true airspeed right off the bat, right there. And a lot of them will give you your ground speed too, which is just so nice. And it can also ID those stations for you. It can ID a VOR for you, which is nice on check rides when you're having to fly or track a radial to VOR. At least when I did it, you had to tune in it, ID it, and then look at your VOR sectional and pretend that you knew what Morse code is and read it off the map and look at it and say, oh yeah, that's the Morse code for the VOR. But the G1000 will simply do that for you, which is just one less thing you got to do, and it's really nice. Um, I also like the fact it's got checklists. It's got checklists for your aircraft on there. So if you, I mean, the checklist, depending on what kind of checklist you have, it can be kind of rudimentary and not very. It doesn't have a lot of steps in it. It's just kind of covers a wide area of things, just what you need to know. But the emergency procedures in there are very detailed, very thorough. You can check them off one by one, and you can find it pretty quickly. And that's really nice to do, especially when you got to do something quick. And of course, you can always refer to POH, but it's nice to just have it right there, right where you need it. Just like one or two presses of a button away. I find that so beneficial. I also like that it can play in your top of descent. So that's something really important, especially later on when well, at least for me when I'm flying 15,000 feet and I'm moving, 150 knots or ground speed of like 200 knots, you're moving across the ground really, really quickly. And you got to plan your top of descent out right. And it's you can use the 3-to-1 rule. It's kind of basic and it's not exact. And you got to give yourself a buffer. So it's really nice just to have the GPS tell you the top of descent is coming up in a minute. And if you're on or if you're on with you're on an IFR flight plan, you can go ahead and request for lower to start that descent, which is nice. That'll give you a little heads up, and then it'll even give you. It's not a glide slope, but it acts like a glide slope to tell you whether or not you're above or below your top of descent, and then it'll tell you where on the descent rate you need to be to hold it. So if you're high, you can just get a descent rate 50 feet lower than what it's telling you, and you'll catch up to it over time. And I think that's so nice to have. You just got to remember what altitude you want to descend to, and I believe it's MSL. So if you're somewhere in mountainous terrain, just remember it's not 1,000 feet above the ground. It's whatever the traffic pattern is or whatever you're descending to, and it'll go ahead and set it up for you all in the GPS, which is just so nice. Um, it can give direction of other traffic that has ADSB out, which again, so useful. Any point in time while you're flying, especially on long flights or when you're in busier airports or you're flying through a Bravo or around a Bravo, you can see the other aircraft. Or if you're getting vectored for an approach, you can actually see the other aircraft. If you're in IMC, instrument meteorological conditions, you can see the aircraft that's ahead of you and how much time it's going to take and how much fuel you're going to burn. Probably just sitting around, or if you're in a hold, you can figure out why, and it just enhances situational awareness, and it just makes flying safer and a lot easier and a lot better. It also has a terrain mode, which I didn't know, which is so useful too, especially when flying in mountainous terrain. That'll tell you when something's if it's yellow on the terrain map, then that's 100 to 1,000 feet below you, and if it's red, it's an immediate problem because it's 100 feet or less. So that's just increasing the safety of flight and increases safety in general. The foundation of aviation safety is risk mitigation. So at any point in time, you can mitigate risk. You're ensuring a better safety of flight. You're being a better pilot, and this system really helps with that. It can also use an OBS. So I really like the OBS system because if you don't have VOR and an approach will tell you to fly this radial outbound off this VORTAC, and you don't have VOR receivers, then you can simply just OBS a course on the radial they give you, and then look at your multi-flight display, and you can see a huge map where the radial is, and then they'll probably vector you to it if you're not close, and you just fly it. And that's what I learned about the G1000 system so far. That's what I know about it. I've gotten all my information either from just personal flying experience, but almost 99% of it is from the King School videos. And yeah, this is my what I learned about the G1000.